Come on. Give me some audio here. There we go. All right. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome in. It's another edition of Wrestling Daily here on Bleacher Report. Sorry for the late, but also early start here. I am Matt Camp. Thank you for being with me today, as you maybe every Monday through Thursday here on Bleacher Report, typically at 3 p.m. Eastern, talking about the entire world of professional wrestling. But today, I get some help doing this. I love to talk to people who are as passionate about pro wrestling as I am. But who also understand that not everything is necessarily for us, but why things are connecting to people, whether that be current day. We're going to talk some AEW. Dynamite 300 tonight is going to be live on TBS and streaming on Max. But people have also always in pro wrestling found some, I think, comfort in the nostalgia of pro wrestling. Sometimes that gets done to death. But for our guest today, he has found ways to take it a bit deeper. Joining us for the first time today on Wrestling Daily, you know him as a boy who makes all the wrestling nice for all of us out there. Welcome to Wrestling Daily, Tom Green. Tom, how are you doing today?
That's too kind of an intro. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. I love being here. Always love talking to you, but I love talking to you in front of people now. So we're going to have fun and talk some AEW. Going to talk some wrestling.
Yes.
That's my favorite thing to do. And going to have fun.
Absolutely going to have fun. And as you see it right there, make sure you're checking out Tom Off the Grid, 8 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. Everybody knows about Deep Cuts Live. If you don't, 9 p.m. Eastern. Tom's pointing to it there. Follow him in those places. Here's what I will say about this. Very simply, if you want to enjoy, laugh, have a smile on your face watching pro wrestling, because there's enough of that other stuff going on, and I don't need to get into that. But Tom, why did you start this, and what has it been like being an internet wrestling boy?
You said it correctly. I refer to myself normally as a content boy, but internet wrestling boy.
It's
also
content
works.
is just I hate that word. It's like, oh, that's a good piece of content. You're way beyond that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So I was doing a GIF account on Twitter for a while. I can't call it X. I can't do it.
Nobody has to. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah. And after a while, I noticed, there's like 50, 100 GIF accounts, and I'm not any different from them. And I have this encyclopedic weird knowledge of like old newsletter stories that people don't remember. And I decided to put it to use. I wanted to promote, because I was doing the live streams at this point. I just started doing them. WCW Deep Cuts Live, where we watch the forgotten quote unquote television classics of World Championship Wrestling in the 90s. Some of them a little more classic than others. But I wanted more people to come in because we're having fun. Like you said, that's what I like doing the streams, because we're not there making fun of it. We're not there. I mean, we're having fun with it, but I like to think I'm not mean-spirited about it. And there are times I even catch myself. I'll make a comment and then I'll go, oh, that's mean. And I will apologize to somebody that might have been passed away for 30 years on stream. But no, with the shorts, I started doing those just as a way to promote the streams. And I thought, maybe, a couple hundred views here and there, maybe get a viewer here and there from it. And that thing kind of exploded. Like, I would have never expected that to do so. I'm looking into like old Observer newsletters and old shoot interviews, and finding something that somebody will blurt out out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, that's an interesting story, but I didn't think it would be interesting enough for some of the numbers I get, not to brag.
Well, no, but I want to jump in on that, because I think part of this as well. And I think this has changed over time, right? If you're a wrestler, are you allowed to be a fan? Are you allowed to be a fan publicly? Now, I work for AEW now, was in WWE, and I loved to get into conversations with wrestlers about pro wrestling, like about like the history of pro wrestling. Drew McIntyre to me was always from the minute I met him, and I first met him, and he came on the bump in like, I don't know, one of the first couple episodes in 2019. If you remember Drew at that time, it was very much, what are we doing with this guy? Is he going to be a guy? Is he a Ziggler third? Is he with Bobby and Corbin? What's that going to be? But I remember sitting and talking with him, and I didn't know him that well, and he wasn't at the height. He was probably 3 or 4 months away from that Rumble win and stuff with Brock. But I was talking to him, and all he could talk about was wrestling and this and that, and I want to do this, and, you know, I tried to tell this guy this, and I went, oh, he's just a big wrestling fan. Like and we're talking about Mike Awesome, and I said, you remind me of Mike Awesome, and he was like, I take that as a big compliment. But there's a guy right there, Tom, who it's never been part of his gimmick at any point in time to show that, hey, I love pro wrestling, but I could talk pro wrestling. I said for a long time, I had talked to people at WWE, I said, there is something here to do with Drew to show that fandom. You've gotten wrestlers from, I'm sure, multiple companies, and you could say, give it out if you want to, who it is, or is public about it, that has watched your stuff. What has that been like? And does that almost give you I guess I would say an acceptance, a seal of approval, not like, you know, the one that happened in Mexico a couple weeks ago during the day, but an actual like, oh, I'm connecting here with people who are doing this at the highest level?
Oh, it's been a blast. I before I was doing it, I did have, you know, friends in the industry, but like my Rolodex has blown wide open over the last year and a half. I mean, he publicly posted about it. Like when I did that Daddy Magic short Why He Rules the other day, he reached out and we talked about, you know, the WCW Deep Cut shorts. And that dude, oh my gosh, that dude loves wrestling. Yeah, like people from every major company now are I get questions from folks. Hey, is such and such story real? I'm like, yeah, that's, you know, I send them the sources. Like, this is where I got it from.
Right.
And like there was I don't want to out him because he didn't give me permission to out him specifically, but I did a short about THQ messed up the royalty checks for the Giant, Paul White. They sent all of WCW's royalties to Paul White. I believe it was for the Nitro game.
Nitro or Thunder, one of those two, right? Thunder?
Yeah, one of those two. Yeah. But they sent everybody's royalties. I assume because like in the address book, like WCW and then White, right? So, but they sent him everybody's checks, and he was smart enough that he put it into multiple bank accounts immediately. And then the accountant was like, hey, did you get this money? And he's like, nope, here's my checking account statement to prove it. It's not there. And they were like, okay, cool. A colleague of his reached out to me and was like, hey, where'd you hear this? And I sent him, you know, a couple of sources. You know, he did an interview years ago with Steve Austin about it and all that. And then 10 minutes later, I get a screenshot of a text that this person had sent to Paul White. And Paul White responded with a picture of the house that he bought with the check. Like, okay, cool, confirmed.
Was the check supposed to go to this person or get a piece of that? Or is that what you were Paul got all of the WCW?
All of it.
But would that have gone to other wrestlers?
Yes. So I believe what it was supposed to happen is WCW was supposed to disperse the money.
Correct.
And instead it all went to Paul. And then THQ just wrote another check. And that's why THQ is out of business.
I was going to say, there is no THQ anymore, unfortunately. I played that Thunder game a lot.
I'm sorry.
The promos, though, beforehand.
Yeah.
That they would hit. And Kevin Nash talked about this on the podcast recently. He's like, I was high out of my mind for that. And he's like, I think Scott Hall's like, don't pick me.
Mm.
Go pick Goldberg or Hogan or somebody. Go on. And like, they just messed around. But I watch those now and I go, those are hilarious. How the hell did this make the video game?
Yeah. Well, and it's like whoever did that for THQ, they didn't bring microphones
Oh, so
or anything to record
it's
the
a
audio.
bad boom that probably, if you
Yeah.
look closely, is hanging in a couple shots.
Yeah, because there's so much echo in all of those. You can barely understand some of them.
What are we talking about that time? 98, 99, 2000?
Yeah.
They don't, half of those guys are checked out anyway in a.
Oh yeah.
But bring in the money, like that's how it goes. That's the nostalgia of pro wrestling. And now I feel like there's been elements of that have helped create where we are today in pro wrestling across the board, because you have, and we're going to get into a lot of AEW talk here in the next 15, 20 minutes or so. But, when I was in WWE, and I started there in 2019 and was done at the early part of last year, when I was there and working on the digital side, man, they were cranking out content of, here's a documentary on Keith Lee's first 2 weeks on Raw. Here's Damian Priest's first, just cranking it out. And it got to the point where, and I don't know if I've said this, but like they made too much content. They had already hit their goals with Peacock halfway through the year. So a lot of that stuff we saw, like the Icon series. We saw the episode with Beth, and we saw the episode with Yoko, and I think the RVD one came out. And then the Alexa one was supposed to come out on July 4th a couple of years ago, and it got shelved. And everybody's like, what the hell happened? And it got to the point where it was like, well, we've hit everything we need to hit. We're going to find other ways to make money. And Tom, that is why the A&E deal exists, because... And this is where I try to get a lay of the land. You and I are going to watch no matter what. We're going to watch old, we're going to watch new, whatever. That A&E deal has really just been, here is the nostalgia, and we're going to paint it in our way. Here are these legends, some more legendary than others. Do you think nostalgia is just ingrained in the fabric of pro wrestling and is a necessity to bringing new fans in and connecting to the past? If done correctly, is nostalgia important to developing new fans?
Absolutely. Wrestling is a never-ending story. It's not like wrestling goes so many months and then stops, and then it starts anew with new characters. It's a in order to understand so-and-so's story, you got to understand the origins and this person who came before them that then they interacted with. And that's why it's really challenging to come up with, like, let's say, I always hear it, and we were talking about it earlier this morning off air, like a starter kit for a new fan, or how to convert them. That's a difficult job, because it's like, how far back do you go?
Right.
You don't want to overwhelm them, because you and I could theoretically go back 30, 40, 50 years with this stuff. And then it's like, okay, now you have homework, and nobody wants to do homework even for wrestling. But it is vital to understand, because there are plenty of things that happen now, whether it be on screen or, in the boardrooms, that make a whole lot more sense when you know the past,
know
what people have done before.
Now, I think there are elements of that. There are, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, older, you might be more interested in that. You might want to go do that. I look at it now, and my perspective completely changed when I was fully immersed in the business of when I'm in WWE. I know what my job is. My job is to talk about everybody and get them over, regardless of what I like or don't like. And I certainly watch the shows differently. And, I'd be doing these post shows for Raw or SmackDown, and I had the full script. I'd be able to look and go, that'll probably hit. That probably won't. What do we need to hit from there? And you can only talk about, a 3-hour show. You can't hit the high spots all the time. You can't hit everything, I should say. But I also I look at wrestling so much differently now, because I know it's not all for me. as a 40-year-old dad, married and in the business, and you have kids, and your family likes watching it. And that's, to me, it's the people that aren't like us that I go, what do you like? What's your market? That's my market research. What's connecting with you? I talked to my wife about it, who's in her 30s. And I like, who do you like? Why does that work? I talked to my 6-year-old daughter. You talk to your son Noli about it, and why are these people connecting? And then for an example, we both love AJ Styles. I remember talking to somebody in WWE about AJ Styles, and this was, a random person. They're not even there anymore, and they're like, well, he's a good wrestler, but I'm not like engaged with him. And I was like, it's AJ Styles. But at the same time, I hear that and you go, okay, that's not for them. Last year when I was talking about the Rhea and Liv and Dom thing, not for me. Don't care about it at all. Don't need a love triangle. But Tom, we see the YouTube numbers and you go, that's working. And that's, I think, where it comes in of there's flavors for everybody. And there is so much pro wrestling out there. You said the word homework. I never wanted to feel for a fan like they have to see everything or they have to watch it. You're going to be able to catch up via social media and YouTube and all these things. And I did an episode a couple of days ago of what's the most interesting thing right now? What do you have to see? You've been watching wrestling for a long time, and I think you would agree, at least from a availability standpoint, there has been no better time to be a pro wrestling fan. We know that. But how do you think wrestlers and shows and everything can kind of get above the noise? What have you noticed anything, whether you're doing things or conversations you're having? What is getting above the noise in 2025?
So I was actually thinking about this a few days ago because I had just as an offhanded project done that Hangman video
Right.
that I put out on my socials, and I was just thinking about why does this dude connect? And then I was talking with a friend of mine who's an indie promoter who, and because you mentioned it before, it's now an accepted thing for people in the business to be fans. And he mentioned, Hangman works because everything's been done in wrestling. You can find video within 2 clicks of any idea you can think of that's could be done in wrestling. It's been done. I think to me, what gets above the noise is when something feels authentic. Something feels like it's not just, okay, I'm following step A, then step B, then step C on a piece of paper. Or this is what I think will work. So I'm going to do it, according to what I think and not, feel the building. That's why I think Cody's worked in WWE because he compared to what was there before him, he was a babyface that felt a little more real than everybody else because he had that edge coming from the other side and being, a little bit different and being a little, he talks a little bit more like a real person. Same with Hangman. He feels real. And wrestling promoters, bookers have misunderstood that for years. It's, going back to, 1999 Nitro, where being real meant we talked about shoots and works, and that's not real. That's you using terminology that people use when they're being real people, but that's not reality. Reality is we're talking about Hangman. People every day wake up with struggles with mental illness and anxiety, and they have to go face the world, and they face struggles where your feelings get the best of you, and you might have a meltdown. Granted, most of us aren't burning down our enemy's house, but we feel that. We've I think most people, especially in the social media age, have had a meltdown or two that we really wish people wouldn't have seen. And that's the connection,
I'm glad you said that, as we got some highlights going here of Hangman and Swerve and the Bucks. That's what I came back to. We have seen a million baby faces before have their rise. get the fans behind them. But it always feels like even if there's losses, the demeanor is very much the same. I'll get them next time. I'll get them next. And that's pro wrestling 101. It's been like that forever. You mentioned Cody. Cody dresses like a heel, but for the most part, he's with the people. He's kissing babies. He's shaking hands. He checks all those boxes. And I think the reason he also connected is because there was that, ooh, he's coming from somewhere else. And last time we saw him, he was Stardust, and he was in Bullet Club, and he was in New Japan, he was in Ring of Honor, and he was in AEW, and that was his company that he helped found, and now he's back, and there was so much buzz, it was undeniable. WWE just can't create that. They can take advantage of that, there's no doubt about that. But I think of Hangman and the main character conversation that's come up with him. And he's a day one guy. And I don't know if people know this. You might know this. When the talk of all of those people being available, pre AEW, one of the most interesting names that I don't think got talked about that had a lot of interest from WWE, and this is before I was there, was Hangman. Like, that is someone they wanted. Now, he clearly made the right call, or who knows? But he wasn't, when he started, Tom, he wasn't at that level. It was, hey, we like this guy. He's in BTE. He's funny. He was in on it. And then over time, with that as somewhat of the basis of who he is, he ends up with Kenny. And we get the tag team. And he finds himself opposite of the Bucks. And the Dark Order's involved. And there's the ups and downs of that. And he has that great entrance. But, there's losses there. There's losses that seem like obvious wins. And that built him up more. But I think, to me, why he's connected so well is because of the downs and how he has reacted to that. Not the typical babyface way. He gets knocked down, and sometimes he stays down because he doesn't know the right thing to do, or thinks he does, or he pushes friends away, or he embraces other friends. He is a man who's gone through it. And I don't think we've ever seen a vulnerable babyface like this before. And I'm not just saying one time. He gets knocked down. He doesn't always get back up. He gets knocked down. He wins the world title. It doesn't go as well as I think anybody would have hoped. And there's been the battle back to that. The struggles of Hangman, to me, are the key to people connecting with him. Is there anybody you can think of? And by the way, for as many people who ask me about questions about wrestling and history, if I have a question, I go to Tom because he knows way more than even I do. But Tom, why is this Hangman thing connecting in a way that's different than anybody else? Is there anybody you can think of that's been on any kind of similar path in pro wrestling?
Closest thing I can come up with, and again, I gotta credit my promoter buddy I was talking to. Ironic considering some of the folks who may or may not like Hangman. Bret Hart. Bret was not, he didn't have the big losses that Hangman necessarily had, but like that Owen feud, he
My favorite.
wore those scars.
My number one favorite feud.
He lost, part of his family, and he had to ride along. And through that loss, he won the world title, lost the world title. Owen cost him the belt against Bob Backlund, and he had that low point. WrestleMania 12, we saw him, disappear for 6 months and then come back and not act necessarily the most sportsmanly, and it led to the heel run in 97. I think Bret's the closest comparison. And as performers, I've never gotten to really talk to Hangman about, theory or anything, but, we've both heard Bret talk about performance theory plenty. They both seem like they put so much thought into every step that their character takes, but yet they play it on such a human level. Like, the old expression, you make the money here. And a lot of guys seem to think that means you act like one of the Marx Brothers and do the big facial expressions. But like Brett and Hangman both also share, they have the most expressive eyes. You know,
That's a
you
great
can
call.
tell everything. You can tell exactly where Hangman is along his story arc or
Look at him right
along
here,
his
Tom.
character. Yeah.
Look the look he's giving Swerve. It's pro wrestling.
Yep.
But I am looking at a man and I go, he doesn't like him. He doesn't want to deal with him. Swerve is giving that look right back to him. That is you're in my past. I don't want you. I can read all of that from that right there. That image. An image in 2025.
Yep.
In a video GIF world, you can see here what's going on. You can get the feeling that Will is the good guy in between the two of them. You can get the feeling that these two guys don't like each other and that they've been through stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's so and look, when you have a hot story like this, you push the hell out of it and you get these things out there. These are not two guys that need to come together and all right, this and this is going to happen and this is yes, but there is a cadence, especially to how Hangman speaks, where and Austin talked about this one time. He said, "We have so many cameras shooting the show. Did he have conversations with people about getting the right? Sure, but he did some watch along for the WrestleMania 17 match with Rock, and he's like, they'll find me. Like they're gonna go find like." That idea of picking up a microphone and then turning this way, or I see people go set up their finishes, but they got to turn to the it takes me out of it. I watch Hangman cut a promo. The camera goes with him. The camera is following his emotion. Does he look down the barrel sometimes? Sure. But it's such a natural way of speaking that you can't tell me those words are on paper. And I think that stands out a hell of a lot more in this day and age.
Absolutely. He talks like a human being. We went through, I don't want to go on the negative, but we went through how many years of, oh, I can tell that this is the 5th draft that you were just handed right before you went out the curtain. And you have to do it word for word or you're going to get yelled at when you get back. And I'm so happy that we've gotten to a point back in wrestling where you can have somebody go out there and, from the heart. And again, the whole Hangman character arc, I feel like the Swerve thing kind of wrapped up into some, backstage stuff, let's say we've all heard about around that time.
Sure.
Where, yeah. And I feel like that the dark cloud from that stuff kind of, because we as people, and I feel like AEW's audience is more so than a WWE audience, they see all of it.
Yeah.
And this has done such a good job of taking that negative energy, putting it over into something productive with the Swerve stuff.
Yep.
And now Hangman, both the character and the performers coming out the other end. And it's such a creative and useful way of taking a real downtime. And now we've all lived through it with them.
Yep.
And I'm all in. We hopefully can go,
And that's the hope, is that he pulls this off and we get to have that he did it. And we were there for him doing it. And I love the idea of a character not being perfect. Not always. And look, baby faces and heels. But nothing, like, he just went through it. It wasn't, oh my God, he attacked this baby face. He's a heel. He just kind of went through, I got to get back to the world title. Oh, this guy's in my way. Now this guy's making it personal. I'm going to make it personal with him with Swerve. And he's not going to get the championship. And then he does get the championship. And Hangman gets sent home. And I'm coming back after that guy. He was going through it. And we got to watch him go through it. And if you understand why things happen or why you're feeling a certain way, then people get it more. Hey, I've been through stuff. People have crashed out on the internet or whatever you want to call it, or said stuff and you go, man, that was a low point for me. I wish they didn't see that. but it will get people behind you. We're a little late on time, and I'm sure we'll talk more here on the future. But I wanted you, Tom, as someone who is bringing all different kinds of wrestling eyeballs or eyeballs to different kinds of wrestling. I know right now, I've seen it, you've seen it. A lot of people are going, hey, what's going on with AEW? I've heard some good things, or I'd like to watch something different. And, go stream on Max, go catch the shows. But it's always, as you said, how far back do you go? So I asked this ahead of time, but give me 3 matches before we quickly talk about Dynamite and All In. Give me 3 matches that an AEW fan or a new fan or a fan who's looking to get into AEW, give me 3 matches, Tom, that you'd say, go watch those now. This is the spirit of AEW right now.
Absolutely. So the first one, you asked me that. First one popped to mind. I didn't have to think about this one. Bryan Danielson, Will Ospreay from Dynasty last year. It's such a good match. It transcends everything. It's for somebody that's not seen AEW, Bryan Danielson, WrestleMania main eventer, you know him, he's great. You have 2 of the best in the world, and with Danielson, one of the best of all time. Ospreay, I'm sure we'll get to that point as his career goes on. But this is probably with Danielson in whatever form of retirement he's in. We all hear things. This is probably the only time this match is ever going to happen.
Right?
And it's such a special moment where, I was before I hopped on with you, I watched. There's a really cool video on AEW's socials of clips from the match with no commentary. You just hear the crowd, and I watched the crowd during it more so than the moves, and it's really special in 2024, 2025 to see a crowd not all have their phones up, trying to get the moment for Instagram. You stare at the ring or you stare at the fans. It's like they're captivated by what's going on,
right?
Both because Ospreay is doing all these incredible moves, but also they're telling this story of Danielson, the gunslinger we've seen in 1,000 battles. Again, that finish where they both just come together, and Ospreay, just because his body does not have the wear and tear, he comes out on top.
There you go.
It's perfect.
It's so good. And it also leads to the rest of the year, but I won't.
Yes.
Something happens at that match that affects Will in the best way possible, and something I don't want to give too much away, but it's a good jumping off point for Will's 2024 is to watch that match and see what happens to him from there on out. I think that's a big part of it. Give me another one, Tom. We got a couple minutes left here.
All right. So it's Mercedes Moné against Chris Statlander from World's End. The
end of last year. Yep.
Yeah. So again, I when I was thinking of this, I'm thinking, okay, somebody who hasn't seen AEW before, but they might be familiar with Mercedes. She's one of the most famous wrestlers in the world.
Which, by the way, let me jump in. That stuff's very important.
Yeah.
That is her name has been made in the biggest wrestling company in the world, and she left and she changed things. But people will go, I know who that is. What is she doing now? It's why Jericho was important in the beginning. It's why Moxley was important in the beginning. It's not about getting these people because they're from somewhere. They're really good. They have talent, but there is that fan base that's already pre-built in. So a Mercedes Moné can get in there with Willow, or as we're going to talk about here, Chris Statlander. And Chris Statlander and these others are going to get that exposure from someone who is already established at that level. And the good thing with Mercedes, and Tom, you and I both know this, she didn't come in to coast on her name. She came in to go, I'm really damn good at this, and now I'm going to do it on in a different place and maybe put more of my spin on things. And there was ups and downs, but she came in to show that great wrestler you've seen for the last 10 years up north, that's still in here. But now I can do things in a different way, which is why matches like this, I feel like, got to put her, almost reset the opinion of Mercedes Moné.
Yeah. And with Stat, and it's not a one-to-one comparison, but Mercedes, arguably her most famous They're the two most famous series, one with Bailey and then her and Charlotte. And I feel like Statlander is a very not a one-to-one comparison again,
Athletic.
but for fans who, it's a similar struggle for the Mercedes character in the ring. Statlander is bigger and stronger. They're able to do some more fancy things, but just Mercedes works very well with that dynamic when she has a bigger, stronger opponent, both in terms of the maneuvers she can pull off, the movement she can do, and the story of the match. She thrives with someone like a Statlander, someone like a Charlotte, and I feel like that familiarity, because people have seen that. If you've never seen Mercedes in AEW, but you've seen Mercedes with the up-team Charlotte matches,
right?
You know the story going in, you know how it's going to be, but then you see all the differences with Statlander, the incredible things she can do. She's such a big personality now. Like I've been watching some old stuff on Max, and the Statlander from when she first came into the company to now,
she was an alien.
But she was very like meek almost, and
she wasn't
like, afraid to come up.
It wasn't her job to cut those promos. It wasn't her job to speak in that way, and we could have a whole other discussion on this. Becoming a television wrestler is so different than working on indies, or I've even said, working New Japan. It's not the same format at all, and it takes time to find that. And I think we've seen a lot of people that obviously have the talent, but all of a sudden it's you got to go back out there again, next week and do this again, or cut a promo, or have this match with somebody different, and that is far different than coming to your local whatever this weekend, and then I'll be back in 4 months. So I think a lot of people learn that, and you have people like Mercedes who have done that before. But then you've also had people who are, important cogs in this company, and they hadn't done that stuff before. Cody Rhodes did. Over time now, that's normal for the Bucks to do that kind of stuff. It's, Okada in the last year, he wasn't doing this stuff in New Japan. It's not what he was asked to do. It's a different format. So you've seen, I think Ospreay has been the best example to me of someone who has made his name on great matches, which is what AEW has plenty of. But when he got to AEW last year as a full-fledged member of the roster, I said, all right, let's see what Will becomes as a weekly television wrestler. Are the promos going to be there? What kind of matches does he have versus the epics he has, at big events? And I think Will Ospreay's genuine enthusiasm and love has connected with people beyond his wrestling. And when that kind of stuff happens, you can see, he's taken what he has already, and now he's going to bring that to a television standpoint. How does he evolve his game? And I think you and I would both probably say Will was never a super strong promo prior to AEW. Wasn't what he was expected to do. I think the most important thing for Will Ospreay, Tom, is the fact that he is connected with a genuine voice and an enthusiasm and a belief in where he is and where he works, but wanting to be the best there. And once again, not your typical words you're hearing on television for the last 30 years. How genuine of a connection, and I'm going to go on to one more match, I think it's part of it, this connection that certain people in AEW have kind of figured out with the fans. And I look at a match like here, I know you're going to talk about Anarchy in the Arena. Being unique in a way that we haven't seen before. Not just being different than the norm, but certain things that are connecting, certain voices that are connecting. Is it just fans being a little bit more engaged if you're an AEW fan?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and I don't want to make this sound like other fans of, let's say, WWE aren't, because
and there are fans of everything. Believe me, we push that all the time. Yes.
Yeah. But I feel like with AEW, you're watching the show and you can very easily tell, because it's not as overproduced, and it's not, you don't have the things propping you up that you might with, different production tricks and such other places, where you can tell very easily, is this person here for the paycheck, or is this person here because they want to be here? And there have been cases, and those folks have come and gone from AEW. And then you've got, like a Mercedes. Mercedes is there. You can tell she wants to see the world. She wants to experience the world of wrestling. And she seems so excited to work with all of this new cast of characters, whether it be in AEW, CMLL, Stardom, she's excited to be there. And Osprey, that you talked earlier about, us, talking to our families and seeing, what do you like about this? Because I know what I like, but what I like, if you did that show, would be you, me, and 5 other people watching.
Right.
But like, I knew Osprey was going to connect within a week of his debut because Noli, like, it was like a fly to a lamp.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, yeah, he's going to work here because he was immediately drawn to him in a way that he hadn't been since Hangman, and it's because Will comes off like a real person who loves AEW. And I think that's a lot of the perception growth also with AEW in the last 6 to 9 months has been, the folks that maybe were just there to kind of say their words, do their match, and leave. They're treading off, and you got folks like Will, you got folks like Hangman and Swerve who are passionate about making the company grow, and you can hear it in every word they say, and you can see it in every move they make.
Yep.
They want to make the thing.
Everything has a meaning.
Yep.
Wrestling's long. Wrestling doesn't take breaks. If you're working for a company where you got to appear on multiple TVs a week or do stuff, look, it's hard. I mean, everybody else gets some kind of break, whether you're in television or sports. It doesn't happen. We see people kind of get refreshed or whatever, but if you're making that connection, or if people are watching every week, they'll know if you're mailing it in. And I don't get that sense on Wednesdays or Saturdays very often, because I think sometimes it's the people who want to be the best, or it's somebody who's going, this is my chance because I hadn't had a match last week or whatever, and I'm going to make the most of that. That is what pro wrestling should be when there are multiple places to go. There is something to that. Got a couple of things I want to shout out for those in the chat. Shout out to Blue. Shout out to Azan. Little Demon. We thank you all for being with us. The legend Tom Green, as he's being mentioned in the chat. Shout out to Hot Mic User also watching us on BR. Tom, we are very late here, but Dynamite tonight, as we take a look at this, 300 episodes is a feat all in its own, which is awesome that is even a thing. Everybody should be celebrating that. But Tom, we're gonna see heroes and villains tonight. We're gonna see Roddy and Kyle and Bandito take on Takeshita and the Young Bucks. We're going to get another heroes and villains match. Gee, I wonder if that partnership is going well, huh? Will Ospreay and Swerve taking on Jalisco and the Beast Mordos. Look at this 4-way. Brody King, MJF, Anthony Bowens, and AR Fox for the number 2 spot in the Casino Gauntlet. Winner of that, we'll see Mark Briscoe to start that one up. And Tom, 12 days before he will face Kenny Omega for the 5th time ever and the first time in 7 years. Kazuchika Okada is going to face Kota Ibushi tonight. You mentioned Mercedes. She's going to face Mina Shirakawa for the TBS Championship 12 days before she takes on Timeless Tony Storm. Very quickly, because we got like a minute. Okada Ibushi happening 12 days before Okada and Omega. I tried to explain this to people. The only time that could happen was if they were both, all of them were in the G1, because New Japan never had singles matches so close together like that. I don't know if fans will get this, because maybe they're learning a little bit more about Ibushi since he's come back, and he only in his first singles match ever in AEW was out for a year. But if you look and go, Okada's wrestling Ibushi and Omega in the span of 10 days. If we said that 5-6 years ago, what are you talking about? No chance in hell. So I don't know if the magnitude of that is like necessarily grasped by everybody that's watching tonight, but it is a pretty damn cool thing that can happen. And AEW continues, even coming off the injury list, to add to their unreal depth of a roster.
This show is this roster is so rich and so bursting with talent that you can drop. Last night Tony dropped that Dralistico and Mordos versus Swerve and Osprey graphic like 11:40 on a Wednesday night. To me, that's like the ultimate roster brag right there. Like, oh, hey, here's this great match that it's just gonna happen and it's gonna be incredible, and we know it. Like that's the AEW magic I love.
Yep.
Where there's so many folks and there's so many of them, you never think about half these matches. And until you see the graphic, look right there. Bandito with the Bucks for the first time since the first All In.
Yep.
And they were incredible together in that match. Like, this card is so good. And it's, just a Wednesday night on TV. And we don't have to stay up until 3 a.m. to watch it on an app to pay $10. It's going to be right there on cable. Turn on the remote. 2 hours.
You got it.
A lot of good wrestling.
A lot of good wrestling and more coming up. We went way over and all that stuff. I want to have Tom on again because we have so much more to talk about. But Tom, real quick here, they see the graphic below. How can they watch you? And any words you want to leave for our Wrestling Daily audience and the AEW fans?
Yeah, check me out on all the apps. Not That Tom Green. The Instagram right now is Not That Tom Green Reels, but I am going back and forth with somebody on Meta to get it switched.
Good luck.
So my personal account will be my stuff and the reels will be over there. But yeah, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitch, WCW Deep Cuts Live, 2 hours of WCW TV that you probably won't see anywhere else because it's locked up in a library. And then a couple of Sundays a month, go off the grid, find some real weird wrestling that won't get copyright dinged on YouTube. And this past week, we watched Rodman Down Under, where Dennis Rodman did an indie show in Australia in July of 2000 against Kurt Hennig.
And that's the fun part of pro wrestling. That's the stuff that Tom will go dig up and have a great conversation with. So make sure you're catching Tom in those spots as you see down below. Follow him. Your favorite pro wrestlers follow Tom, so you should as well because it's all beautiful stuff out there. We like to celebrate the fun of pro wrestling, as we will see tonight on Dynamite. Tom, I thank you for being with me here on Wrestling Daily. And for everyone else, thanks for being with us for an extended edition. You can always, of course, catch this show typically 3 to 3 Eastern, whether it be on Bleacher Report or on my YouTube. And I will catch you tomorrow to talk about wrestling even more right here on Wrestling Day.